Hey, everybody in the Meetup group. This is Kevin and my best buddy, Steve. Hey, Steve.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, everyone.
Hey, we just wanted to do a quick recap video of our last meetup, which was last Wednesday. And our topic was changes and challenges associated with the shift. And we had a lot of topic points that we brought to the fore and discussed with the group of people that showed up. And just want to give a quick shout out to those that wound up showing up for the meetup. Adi, Kirsten, Karen, Jonathan, Aaron, Elizabeth, and Cindy. So I just wanted to say thanks for making the effort to show up last Wednesday. Your input was invaluable and your energy was just amazing, wasn't it, Steve?
It was great. Thank you. I enjoyed being with all of you. It was great.
Yeah. So Steve and I wanted to go over some of the changes and challenges associated with the shift. And interestingly, there's a aspect of it that we want to clarify first. And so, Steve, if you wouldn't mind talking about it a little bit and then jumping into the list after you do that.
Sure. So Kevin and I put together this list of 15 different challenges, or at least experiences, as you may call it, that are common for people going through the shift. And some people who have done a bit of reading and listening regarding to the awakening process will see these as being familiar. And indeed they are. So these are all things that are typical or common for people to go through that are going through the awakening process. And so it happens that those two lists, the list of symptoms for awakening and symptoms for going through the shift, they pretty much overlap. And that's not surprising considering the fact that the shift is an accelerated awakening of humanity. So I just thought I'd bring that together.
I think that's good, Steve. And the one point also to make here is that we can't really call all of these things challenges, because some of them are kind of fun and some of them are exciting and some of them are challenging, of course. But so you can't categorize everything as necessarily being a challenge, right, Steve?
That's true, yeah, and you'll see that as we go through this list. Some of these things are distinctly not challenging; they're benefits.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are challenges too, though.
Like what, Steve? What's number one on the list?
Okay, well, one of them, number one, is a challenge typically, and that's relationships.
Oh.
And we won't go in depth into these. I mean, it would be easy to, as we did during the meetup. And there's much more that could be said about them, but we're just going to kind of touch on each of them briefly. So relationships is an important one. You find that as we go through the shift and as people go through awakening, that relationships that they had, whether they were friendships or in some cases family, whereas they were quite meaningful in the past, then kind of just lose their attraction and you fall apart and drift apart. So anyway, that's number one.
Yeah, number two is changes in passions. And I know for a fact that my passions have changed since I've sort of gone down my spiritual path. And actually, spirituality is now one of my passions. But changes in that, things that once jazzed you and no longer are that important to you, you may find that as being a challenge. But you also find that there are new passions that arise as you're moving forward in your increasing vibration, your increasing energy.
Yeah, I think that's very common, and it can be frustrating because people will go, well, you know, I used to enjoy basket weaving or marquetry or whatever, and then it just doesn't turn me on anymore, and so that's common.
Yeah.
Another item on the list is physical changes. So people may experience things differently. They may hear or see different colors, hear different sounds. I think Kevin mentioned that he now hears kind of a ringing in his ears that he never did before. So that those are common symptoms, these changes in physical perceptions.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Another is a lack of interest in work. The things that we enjoyed doing from a work standpoint have changed or can change. They really haven't changed so much for me, but for a lot of people, we do see it's harder for them to get up for the challenges of their work environment.
Yeah, I think that's true. Another one that seems to be common is a aching or a longing to find one's purpose in life. Whereas before, it may have been pretty straightforward as to what they're interested in and what they want to apply themselves to. But this is a deeper yearning for understanding, why am I here? What am I being called to do here?
Yeah, higher purpose especially. And I know that's been a challenge for me in the past and something that I've pursued in trying to find out. So I can speak to that one pretty directly. Another one is more connection with nature. So interestingly, tonight I took a spin class, Steve, and I was talking to the spin instructor, and she mentioned that I was talking about the fact that I'm going to be in Las Vegas next week. And she said, well, I found myself not being as drawn to the big city as I used to be. And I'm more desiring to just be around nature. And I said, well, you know what? That's actually there's a change in the sort of the energy that's going around right now that I think you might find is a cause of that. She kind of looked at me kind of strange. And I said, well, you probably just don't like big cities. But it was one of those things where the connection, I wanted to say, hey, this is actually part of the shift. You should be, you should be embracing this change. This is part of the increasing the higher vibration of humanity. But I don't think it was appropriate for my spin instructor, or at least I don't know that it was. So
yeah,
anyway.
You've got to be sensitive and make quick judgment calls for situations like that. Encountered it many times. Not always making the right decision.
Correct. So what's next?
Yeah. So another one is loneliness.
Oh man,
that kind of goes hand in hand with the change in relationships. Before that used to, give you a lot of fulfillment, aren't there anymore. And it's more likely that all of a sudden you're on your own. It feels like there's no one that you have that in your surroundings, the people that you associate with, that you have anything in common with. And that leads to feelings of loneliness.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I went through a severe bout of depression over the loneliness factor. And it was only after I came out of that I realized that there are actually a lot of people that have the same beliefs that I do. And there was no need to feel lonely, but I definitely felt that. So, feeling of immediate connection to strangers or people that you just met. And I'm finding that more and more in my life, that I find, and even just in this meetup, it's been apparent. The people that have been showing up, I feel almost are lifelong friends of mine, even though we've only met twice now. So that's a good example of it.
Yeah, well, my guess is that a lot of these people you probably have met at other times, either on the other side of the veil or in other lifetimes.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for them being so familiar to you.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Another common one is emotional changes. And oftentimes those changes are not pleasant. It could be dark night of the soul, as we've discussed before. Depression is not uncommon.
Give me some good ones, Steve. What are some good ones?
Right. So good ones are just kind of creative bursts. So perhaps you can look at them as being manic and depressive, if you want to put it into a common context. But it could be creativity or spiritual, what's the word I'm looking for? Spiritual epiphanies. Things that all of a sudden you become aware of, or perhaps you find that you've dropped some of these older, heavier emotions. So a lot of emotional churn going on for the better and the more challenging at the same time, but that's not uncommon.
Yep. The revealing of personal or spiritual gifts. such as intuitive awareness or psychic things that psychic gifts that you find that you have are more apparent now with the shift and the awakening. And I'm coming into contact with a lot more people with those particular gifts, and I need to be thankful for the gifts that I have. Sometimes I don't appreciate whatever those are enough, but the appearance of these gifts is becoming much more common these days.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Another one is a motivation to look inward to find happiness. I think that in times past, or perhaps prior to the shift taking full steam, we may have found a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction in external things. It could be hobbies or whatever, but things that are not focused internally. But as both a part of the shift and as a part of awakening in general, it tends to draw you inward and to look at that spiritual nature of yourself, and to ask the question, who am I? And to try and answer that. And just to realize that your happiness is really dependent upon what's going on inside, and less so much so what's going on outside.
Wow. I think you could probably add self-love to that kind of internal look of awareness. But we'll leave that one for another day. Changes in sleep patterns. A lot of people are noticing that they're not sleeping the same way that they did 3, 4, 5 years ago. I associate that with the shift to some extent, and I've noticed a change in my own personal sleep patterns as well. And I don't think it's just a matter of me getting older. I think it's this higher energy vibration keeps me from having maybe quite as deep a sleep as I normally would. But other people are noticing they need to sleep more. In the meetup, some people were actually saying they're sleeping more these days than they were in the past. So it's sort of whatever your need is on a personal level.
Right, but it is not uncommon for it to be different. For you may have done one thing for many years, and then all of a sudden you're shifting for no explainable reason. Well, the explanation may be the shift.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Another one that is often associated with the shift and with awakening, but the shift for humanity in general, is changes in responses and reactions to food. So that could be intolerances and sensitivities. And we found this to be a big talking point at the meetup. For those who were there, most of the people there had something to say about changes in their sensitivity and intolerance to certain kinds of foods. So that seems to be a common one.
Hey, why don't we make that a meetup topic sometime, Steve? What do you think?
I think that would be a great topic. We would have a lot of conversation.
I like that. Yeah, put a pin in that one, buddy.
Got a pin.
All right. Yeah. So another one, and this one I'm going to attribute to you, Steve, and I wish I had thought of it, but you said a belief that there's more to life than what you've experienced previously, but not knowing quite what that more to life actually entails. And that's a bit of that sort of internalizing that you talked about earlier, but I feel that it's an innate condition that is associated with the shift. And I certainly have felt that, as well as most people who are awakening right now.
I agree. All right, and so the last one on the list, which is not uncommon, is for people to take on an interest in serving others and serving humanity in general. And this kind of ties in with the desire to find one's purpose. And typically, I think this involves an internal feeling that the world is changing and evolving, and it needs us to help it do that. And what part can I and should I play? What part am I being called to play in order to help it make that transition? And that's common.
Well, and once you say that, that's a big kick in the pants for us to put the meetup and the Facebook pages together and to try to kind of lock arms with other people going through the shift to try to all help each other to make that transition as easy as possible. I mean, that's sort of our purpose.
Yeah, and so that's kind of, this meetup is Kevin's and my response to that inner call.
Yeah.
It would be a good way to put it.
Yeah. So I was going to put a 16th one on, but I can't remember what it is. But I think it had something to do with forgetfulness. And so I don't know if I can blame that on the shift, but I'm going to, because I've become more forgetful in my old age. So
sounds good. Me too. So it's got to be the shift, huh?
That's what I say. So anyway, Steve, I think this has been a great jumping off point. I think that on the Meetup site, there's a discussion aspect to the Meetup site, and we would love for people to talk about this particular video. But I also want to mention that we put on there recently a resources page in the discussion section. So that's something that's come up in the last 2 meetups. People have wanted to, well, we've mentioned books and channelings and things like that. You and I have, Steve. And so thank you, Steve, for putting the discussion point together. But we've created this resources page in the discussion section. So if you're interested in looking at some of those citations and resources, that's the place to look.
Right. So if you want to make a contribution or just read the resources that are already mentioned there, go into the discussions page and look for the specific discussion that is entitled, or the first word is resources in all cap letters. And so that'll just help you to locate it. It's not a great place to put it, but we couldn't find a better place.
Yeah, and reply to that. If you've got a resource that you'd like to add to the list, we'd love to add. I mean, let's just keep it going for for eternity. Let's go. Let's not time limited. Let's go eternity. But reply to that particular discussion point, and that'll keep the flow going of all the different resources, so that everybody can see and take advantage of it if they need to. Right. So, Steve, this has been a little long. So you know, I apologize, but we did go through all of the list. But I think it's probably, unless you have something else to say, we should probably put it to a close.
We should. So thank you all for listening. Hopefully you got something of value out of that, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.